Wednesday, February 9th meeting of the Beaufort County Stormwater Management Utility Board. First, I'd like to call for approval of the agenda. You have the agenda in front of you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's approved unanimously. Now approval of the minutes for the December 15th, 2021 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Or do we have any comments on those meetings? We have the minutes before us.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from a prior meeting.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah. I abstain, I wasn't here.
Okay. Let's start off with the introductions.
Julianna, Lauren, Beaufort County Stormwater.
Alice,
Introduction. Oh, thank you.
introductions.
I'm Alice Howard, Beaufort County District 4.
Emphasize Beaufort County Public Works Director.
Brittany, Deputy County Attorney.
Your back row.
I'm Molly Davis, and I'm with Woolpert. I'm a water resources engineer in training.
JP Johns, Water Market Director for Woolpert.
Alan Warren, USC Beaufort.
Jacob Terrytown, Hilton Head, Stormwater.
Denise Parsec, Commissioner with Beaufort Conservation District.
Carolyn Wallace, Beaufort County Stormwater Utility.
Ellen Stewart-Camo, Clemson Extension.
Julianna Corbin, Beaufort County Stormwater.
KatieHerrera, Beaufort County Stormwater.
Steve Andrews, Sheldon District.
Patrick Mitchell, representing Ladies Island.
James Clark, representing unincorporated Port Royal.
Bill Bauer, Town of Bluffton, Watershed Manager.
Alan Schneider, representing unincorporated Beaufort County. Okay, do we have any public comment today? Floor is open for public comment. If not, we'll go with the special presentation. Beaufort County Legal Update, Brittany Ward.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. Just a quick update on the legal status as far as the IGAs that we have, in particular with the two municipalities, one with the city of Beaufort and one with the town of Port Royal. Back in 2013, Beaufort County Stormwater Utility decided to pursue delinquent fees for the two municipalities, in particular the military installations. Since then, we've been trying to communicate with those parties. In addition, we have engaged an outside law firm to start some of those research as well as some findings to assist with those. And then as of recently, as of 2 years ago, both municipalities have written letters to us respectively to stop to pursuing those delinquent fees. Since then, we have disengaged our relationship with the outside attorney, and since then we are starting to possibly move forward in possible negotiations to start some talks and things of that nature. For specifics,
So I'll chime in here. The county administrator on Monday, and just to repeat what he said here, the outside law firm of Gentry Locke out of Richmond, Virginia, we have disassociated ourselves with them. That is an effort for us to be allowed to speak with the military installations. Previously, there was an understanding that they would not speak with us due to us being represented and the potential of foreseeable litigation. We want to make it clear to everybody that that's not the direction that we're going in, and that we would like to sit down at the table with the municipalities as well as the installations and have conversations. So putting that on the record again on behalf of the administrator. Secondly, what we're here today about was the IGAs. As you all know, the county has entered into IGAs for the collection of the stormwater fees. Specifically, I believe it's section 5.4, says that the county is responsible for going after any of those fees and ensuring that those fees are collected. Pursuant to the letters that Neil was just referencing, we would like for the IGAs to be amended in order for there to be additional language stating that we are not to collect fees for these specific entities. I think the reason behind that is because otherwise the county still has a liability on our hands that we're not doing something that we contractually are obligated to do. So we need some type of recognition from the town and the city to say that we're not obligated to uphold our contractual obligation of collecting those fees at this time. So that's what he was coming here today to acknowledge, that we're going to pursue having those conversations with the town and the city to amend the IGA pursuant to those terms.
Are there any questions about what's happening at this time?
Well, good, that means I covered it then. Thank you.
So,
Okay, thank you.
yep, and so Chairman, just the next step to kind of give you all some reference is with the presentation Monday at the Natural Resource Committee that transpired with Brittany and myself. Today's presentation, we will be moving it forward to a full-blown Natural Resource Committee and then start the process to go through County Council for the adoptions of those changes.
Thank you. Next special presentation, Stormwater Department Audit Report, Woolpert Incorporated.
Good afternoon. Hope everyone's doing well. Reiterate, we introduced ourselves before, but my name is JP Johns. I'm the Water Market Director at Woolpert. We had the opportunity to work with Katie and the Stormwater Department of doing a mock audit. Mock audits can be very important for stormwater programs to prepare you for if the state would come in and do an audit, if EPA would come in and do an audit. And it really gives you kind of a good state of where are we at in our program. So very excited to be here today to talk about that. And then Molly is going to lead us off here with our presentation.
Okay. As I said before, my name is Molly Davis, and I'm a engineer in our Charleston office, and I will go ahead and get started. So, if you could go back to the agenda. Yeah, so first off, we'll start off just with the purpose of the audit procedure, kind of go over the audit findings in general. Today, we are going to focus on reviewing the 6 minimum control measures in the permit. During the audit, we covered all of the program elements, but due to time today, we're just going to review the 6 minimum control measures. And then at the end, we will open the floor for questions. Next slide. Okay, so the overall purpose of the audit, well, the primary purpose of the audit is to prepare, like JP said, for a DHEC or an EPA audit. And it's really to give an overall review of the program, to look at all of the information, all of the documentation of Beaufort's stormwater program, see where they are in compliance, maybe where there's areas that need improvement, and just to provide recommendations for the overall program growth and development. Next. Okay, so going into the overall audit procedure, the very first thing we did when we started our audit back, I guess it was last summer, was we presented Beaufort County, Katie and Neil and Julianna with a request for information. So we're just asking them for the permit, their NOI, all of their information and documentation related to all of the different program elements. And then we took all of that information, reviewed it, we formulated a list of questions to ask them about each of their program elements. And then we sat down with them for audit interviews. We did 2 consecutive days of audit interviews with Neil and Julianna and Katie, and then we did a half day of site visits. So we asked them all kinds of questions about their program, similar to an audit performed by DHEC or EPA. And then we compiled everything we learned into a final audit report. And that's kind of what we're going over today. Next. Okay, so the audit report is really just presenting the findings of the audit that we performed. It's kind of like a menu of recommendations of what the county can do. Some of those are compliance recommendations, and then the other recommendations are best practices and then benchmark program recommendations. So benchmark program recommendations would really set the county apart from other stormwater programs in the Southeast. So our overall audit findings, as you can see, we kind of use this graphic to display where the county stands for each of the program elements. This is overall. On the left, you can see non-compliant, so that would be actions would need to be taken to reach compliance, and then on the right is compliant, and there's varying forms of compliant from needs improvement to sufficient to benchmark status. So overall, the county was between that sufficient and benchmark status. And the county is kind of different than other MS4s in the fact that their stormwater program was created before they were designated by DHEC as an MS4. So there's a lot of things that they were doing prior to being permitted. So a lot of the recommendations that we found from the audit have to do with documenting certain things. So the county's already doing them, but there's some things that need to be documented in order to be fully compliant with some of the program elements. And now I'll turn it over to JD.
Thanks, Molly. So just to give you a background, as Molly said, we're going to hop into our 6 minimum measures. We've done these audits for the past 20 years or so across the Southeast. We've done them for Richland County, Greenville County, Georgetown County. We've done audits for the city of Raleigh. We've actually did the Louisville Jefferson Metropolitan Sewer District up in Kentucky. So we have a lot of background of performing these audits and seeing what other MS4 programs, not only in the state of South Carolina, but what people are doing in North Carolina and in other areas. So when Molly was mentioning those benchmark status, we kind of have a really good idea of what other programs are doing to become benchmark, to be considered some of the best stormwater programs in the Southeast. So what's nice on that over one, we can see Beaufort County is pushing overall on that level. But as we go through each one of these measures, we're going to see there are some areas where we found some things that could help with becoming not just on the end of compliance, but moving up. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the public education and outreach. The good thing about this program is the county is part of the Low Country Stormwater Partners, which is run by Clemson University. So here, a lot of really good things are going on with the county. From a DHEC standpoint, DHEC is very much on board for the municipalities that are using these types of programs. But with that being said, there are always some things that the county can look at to become that benchmark status. So here you can see we're definitely much more than compliant. Sometimes some of the recommendations that we had in here is to make sure one of the permit requirements is to have your stormwater management plan on your webpage. So we do want to make sure that we have that. And then if you have any updates to your program, make sure that gets put up there for the public to be able to see. And then as we move to the benchmark, one of the things that we noted here is some of our benchmark programs across the Southeast are doing some of their public education and outreach in Spanish or in some other languages to make sure that we can reach all the workers who are on the sites. So we did have that. Now, we're not going to talk about every line item of best practices or benchmark. Those are going to be in the audit report that you guys will have the chance to read. So when you see those, you may see some of these recommendations, or if you have questions on that. Next slide, please. So with our public involvement and participation, here, again, we can see the county's doing really well. We're right up there pushing that benchmark status. Some of the best practices here that we did recommend was reinstating the county storm drainage stenciling program. The county had previously done that, and that campaign had stopped. So that's, again, pushing towards a really good practice is to stencil your storm drains. Great for the public involvement, getting different groups to be involved with that. Creek cleanups are really good for public involvement type activities. And then at our benchmark level, we even threw out things, again, Clemson's doing a great job for the county, but things like having a mascot. A lot of your benchmark programs have a mascot, and Julianna said she wants to go to events around the county, and whatever the county could come up for a mascot. Would you come up with Pearl the Oyster?
That's it.
Pearl the Oyster could be your mascot. And then another thing, if you look closely in this picture, is requiring manhole lids that say, don't dump. And SCDOT actually is already having these casted. And we were actually out on a project here when we did the field audit, and we saw one of these. So it's not a requirement, but we are seeing people are using those. Great, again, for the public involvement participation to see that right there, that they understand that this is a stormwater manhole, not a sanitary sewer manhole. That kind of ties in with that stenciling program. Those two things could go hand in hand. Next slide. Illicit discharge detection and elimination, or IDDE, as you'll hear me say that because it's a long term. So if you're familiar with that program, here we're trying to find where are there illicit connections, are there spills, are there things going on. Here you can see we were definitely compliant for the county, but here's where we saw maybe some room for improvement, and a lot of this had to do with the documentation that Molly identified. The IDD program for the MS4 permit has some very strict, stringent documentation methods that you need to have those SOPs recorded. You need to have what we call an enforcement response plan written down. And that way, when the county says, when DHEC says to the county, can you submit these things to us? You have that clearly written during an audit. You can kind of slide these SOPs over. You can slide those enforcement response plans over and say we're covered. When we did the audit, we didn't see those documents per se. There's different ways that the county is handling it. So it's not like we're just letting illicit discharges happen. We just need to get a little bit better with the documentation. The other thing that we looked at was the dry weather screening. The permit does require dry weather screening. So if you're familiar with that, that's looking at your outfalls. You do dry weather screening. You basically visually observe your outfalls and then sample if needed when it hasn't rained for 72 hours. We want to do that for all the county's outfalls. And a really good way to do that is if you think of the normal permit term is supposed to be 5 years, we would recommend we'll do 20% of your outfalls, every year. So in a 5-year period, you would get 100%. And of course, the current permit is being extended per se because the new permit's not ready. Then what you do is you just keep doing 20% of your system, because just because you did 20% 5 years ago, you may have the potential for some new illicits in those areas. So that's a good recommendation, kind of for a best practice. One thing that we talk about for benchmark programs, flip books. Create these IDD flip books for all county staff. I mean, illicit discharge is not just a stormwater issue, it's a county-wide issue. And that way you can have all your county employees with a very simple flip book that can say, if you see something like this, it's probably an illicit, then make the call. Because all the county employees, they're out there every day, and you won't want someone to happen to just walk by one and not recognize what it is. So you can do countywide training on IDDE and have these flip books is really good to be that benchmark program. Next. All right, construction site, stormwater runoff control. Here we can say we're kind of right there. We're right in the middle of being compliant, doing a good job with this program. There is a very interesting thing it is written in the MS4 permit that the county has to create training program for construction contractors. A lot of the MS4s are having some issues of how do we do this, but we want to be clear that that is a permit requirement, so that's something that we want to look at to make sure that we are meeting that requirement. Another thing here is create a standard operating procedure for plan review. So again, this is that documentation. The county's doing plan review, doing a great job with it. But if the state says, I want to see what your plan review process is, I want to see how you handle when someone isn't compliant with their first set of plans that they put in, how do you do that process? We talked about enforcement response plans or ERPs. That the county does have that set, but here we think having a flow chart that would go along with your issues that you might see in the field. So again, if someone's out on their site and they don't have their silt fence up, what's our flow chart? What are our process, and what's going to make it very easy for the permittee or the landowner to understand, if I don't do these steps, this is the process that the county's going to follow, and then everybody's on board to understand that up front, not trying to learn it during the process. And then another recommendation we had there was develop a workflow to track and save all permit plan review inspection information in one location. This is one thing that we saw, and this can be a difficult problem. We see this sometimes as you've got different sets of programs, spreadsheets, certain things of where we're keeping the information. And sometimes it can become difficult to understand where we are in the process. So the recommendation here is how can the county really work together across departments and systems to help out the stormwater on their plan review and inspections, not only for the during construction, but then for our post-construction when we're looking at those BMPs. That is kind of a simple one-stop shop where maybe it's geo-reference, so you can click on a point, you can see the past inspection. So, again, going to the best practices or benchmark, that's where we would like to see the county, because it will improve the efficiency of the processes. Another last thing that we did have on the benchmark program, and we've seen this to be a pretty good thing that is getting better plan submittals for the first review, is requiring a fee for plan resubmittals. There are some MS4s across the state that will say, we'll look at your first set of plans, we'll make some comments, you hand it back in. At that point, if you have to resubmit, you have to pay a resubmittal fee. What that does is it stops the designers from trying to meet their client requirements of getting the submittal, where that first submittal is not a very good one. And we talked, and we're seeing that the county is getting some of those. Hey, I'm going to make my first submittal, and it's not a good one. If you know that you're going to have to pay to resubmit, you're going to force people to make that first submittal a little bit better. So kind of a benchmark idea to think about there. Next. Okay, the post-construction. So here we're looking at the post-construction program. So of course, with the post-construction program, we have the plan review side of looking at the water quality designs. The county has their new manual, the Soloco design manual, so that's really good. So one thing that we know is we need to make sure all the documentation, again, that the county has now is referencing their new manual. Not a difficult thing to do, but we want to make sure we are referencing all the new requirements throughout our MS4 permit requirements. One thing that we looked at is the post-construction BMPs. So there's different requirements to permit about when post-construction BMPs need to be inspected. So we want to make sure that we are following those permit requirements, that you do a closeout inspection, and then that the county staff needs to get back out to those once every 5 years. We did find an interesting thing that the way one thing is written is it says every 3 years, so the county is being more stringent than the permit requirement. But the MS4 permit says that the county needs to get out there and inspect it every year. And then the county needs to look at and make sure that these landowners are following their maintenance plan, which typically requires an annual inspection. So the county needs to have a way to make sure that that's being tracked. So a lot of these things are being done. It's just getting those into a really good process. And as we were mentioning, some geo-reference type way where Katie or any of you could go on and click on a site and see, okay, here's the site, here's the BMP was inspected annually, this is when the county inspected it, here were any deficiencies that we saw for these particular BMPs, and were they handled or not? Because a problem that you see is the landowners will have annual inspection requirements. A lot of them aren't even doing them. And then you have others who, when they do them, it's good. Everything's good. It's good every year. Then the county comes up 3 years later and it's not good. And you don't want that to be a surprise. Another thing that we talked about for a best practice for the county in this program was the ordinance right now requires that a professional engineer have to do the post-construction inspections. Just like with the sediment erosion control program, DHEC has the SEPSCI program. Are you familiar with the Certified Erosion Prevention Sediment Control? Well, COMSID also now has a post-construction B&P inspector certification. So a recommendation there would be to allow those inspections to be done by a professional engineer or someone who's been certified by a class. It's basically same sort of language that we see in the construction general permit. And last but not least is our pollution prevention and good housekeeping. Here what we did is we made some site visits for the county. Typically if EPA or DHEC comes in, they are going to want to go visit, just as we did in this audit. They're going to want to visit your public works facility. They're going to want to see an active construction site. And they're going to want to visit a couple sites that have post-construction BMPs. We went to the public works facility and we saw that the county's doing some good things there, but there are some needs improvement on that. So we kind of said here, clean up your public works facility. One thing that you highly want to be aware of is that when DHEC or EPA is going to come and do an audit, they're going to go to the facility. Now the nice thing about this audit is we wanted to see things as is, just kind of see where we stand. So we saw some really good things. The fueling areas were good. The shop areas were good. We did see some areas where getting some booms around where vehicles that may have been damaged. Just getting something there. We saw, radiators dripping. Auditors just will eat that stuff up. But if you have that contained with some sort of little boom, that really helps. And then we saw some other materials that should be contained and be covered that weren't there. So again, those are going to be really important things to make sure that you're taking care of during a state audit. So we made recommendations to that. I think one thing that's important is to make sure that all entities within the county understand what's being stored at the public works facility, because it's not just stormwater. Stormwater can handle their section, but when you've got other agencies within the county who are keeping things on there, you have to remember that the stormwater permit is for the entire county. It's not just for the stormwater program. One thing that we talked about here was to ensure that all corrective actions, inspections are being addressed. So if you do have that issue when you go to your own facility and you say, hey, I've got an issue here, it should be fixed in 30 days. You want to come back and make sure that it is fixed in 30 days. You want to be a good steward of when you're telling a construction operator you need to fix your stuff, the county needs to make sure that they're holding their own staff to that same sort of schedule. So having that schedule and making sure we have that, making sure we have a true maintenance schedule to go out and look at these things will be very important. This program, again, is very important that we have the documentation to follow these procedures. So as you mentioned, those were the 6 minimum measures. There were some other things that we looked at in this audit that we're not presenting here today, but these 6 minimum measures tend to be the standard things that when DHEC and EPA come into audit. But when you see the audit report, you'll see we looked at some other things and made some recommendations on that also. So with that, we'll take any questions.
Question, within the main audit, which I know we'll go through the whole thing, did y'all identify like some of your recommendations, what you think can be done with current staff and, you know, kind of within what we have and what we're doing versus what's going to be additional layer with more funding, more money, et cetera?
Yeah, the thought with most of these is you don't need the additional staff to do this. I would say the one thing would be, how do you get all those different operating systems tied together? That might be one where do you have...
The one, like when I was thinking about what you were mentioning, the post-construction registered engineer, like would that be under the county or the developer?
Well, that ordinance language there was that was requiring the landowner to have a professional engineer. And one of the reasons why we say that is I'm a professional engineer. I understand our rates are a little bit higher. And I think if you allow someone with that certification, again, with that CLMSA certification, it'll be easier for the people to do it because it might not be quite as expensive to get that done. Yeah, good question.
I have a question, and that is in terms of, you're reviewing this with the utility, and Katie, was there any concerns from the utility in terms of, well, I don't think we should do this, or?
So you're talking about the funding?
No, I'm talking about your audit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you reviewed it with the utility, with Katie. Was there any pushback from the utility in terms of saying, no, we don't think we should do that, we don't think we have to do this? Or did they say that they're going to comply with the recommendation of the audit?
They were very open, and that's a great question because one thing, the only way this audit works is if people are honest. So when we sat down with everybody, and as we said, Katie, Neil, and Julianna were there for every session, but then we brought in different staff from different departments to come in and ask questions. And everybody was very open. They didn't try to hide anything because we said hiding it to us isn't going to help you. So when we found some of these potential deficiencies, we presented them and very open to understanding why we need to do these sort of things. Yes, sir.
So Katie, is he correct in terms of?
Oh, yeah. So, I guess, so like JP mentioned, they gave us a series of things for needing improvement, benchmark status, best practices. And so from that list, I broke everything out into kind of a work plan. So what we should really be addressing first, and then what we can work towards later. Certainly the areas that JP mentioned that might need a little more improvement are the places that we're going to be working on first. And then once we get to those sufficient and then benchmark statuses, then we can really ramp things up a little stronger for each of those MCMs. But right now, it's just important that we continue to meet all the documentation requirements that the permit stipulates. So things that GP mentioned where we have the process in place, we just don't have it written down. So we just need to take that and put it to paper. Some of these are just as simple as that. Other things are going to take a little bit more coordination. For example, the public works facility, because again, we work not only with the stormwater department, but there are several other departments that either have things on that campus or utilize that campus frequently that it'll take a little bit more education on our part to get that in where it needs to be. But overall, I mean, there are some areas, that we did better and some that we didn't. But again, I think the important thing is that overall we are in compliance. And once we get these areas where we might need to be a little bit more sufficient, I mean, meeting DHEC and EPA will just be easy breezy, which is exactly the purpose of this process.
So you think the audit was very valuable?
Oh, absolutely. JP spends all of his time probably within that permit and knows it back and forth, where we know it, but there are a lot of little intricacies, and so not having something on paper, again, we do it, we just, might not have realized we need to actually have something formally printed or written down. So again, I think the bulk of the recommendations out of the report will be very attainable to address. All of it will be attainable, just some things will be attainable a lot quicker than others.
Well, thank you. So it sounds like documentation is the key to this.
Documentation and making updates in the annual report, some ordinance language changes. I'm trying to think of more of the general ones. Like JP mentioned, the construction education for contractors. We thought we were meeting that by having pre-construction meetings, but it's a little bit more comprehensive than just that. And so now we can just create a training book and say, this is exactly how you need to do what you need to do, and go from there. So again, we kind of thought we were doing that, and JP was like, well, they really want to see it more in this style. So that's what we're working to adapt to as well.
And that's where some other municipalities for that have created. I mentioned the flip book for IDDE. They've created during construction flip books of, here's the proper way to install silt fence, good, bad, ugly, kind of to understand this is what we expect. So if yours looks like this, hey, you've got a flip book, we shouldn't be arguing over this, that's ugly. Or, hey, you did a really good job here. So certain things like that can fall under that. And those are not difficult things to do. It's just going out, finding those good pictures, because you want to have pictures of Beaufort County. You don't want to have a picture of Greenville County in your flip book. People know the soil difference pretty quickly.
There's a program in Kentucky that they have a full-blown field day that all their contractors are required to come to. And that might be a goal down the road, but right now, we're not there yet. So.
Okay, Katie, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, JP. Okay, that wraps up the special presentations. We will now get to the reports. And the first report, utility update, KatieHerrera.
Fabulous. Back again. All right, we'll go ahead and get started with the utility update. There are just a few things that I'd like to highlight for y'all. The first of that is being the amendments we previously brought to you for approval with the Soloco manual updates and the ordinance. That was approved back in January, and so as of February 1st, those new requirements for better site design and a few other things are now fully implemented with the Soloco manual. I know Mr. Watkins isn't here today. Previously, the chairman had tasked he and I to coordinate on some special presentations. We have not yet had that conversation, but we do still anticipate getting some of these off the agenda and in real life. The first of which is the performance that was done by Dr. Monty and his team, and then the Cypress Wetlands Project. Hopefully April will be a little bit warmer and we may actually be able to do our meeting on site like we had intended last year, and unfortunately due to weather had to change. But we are still working on the suggestions to meet at different projects and also have more special presentations included. Today, we were able to take 2 of those off of the agenda. You just saw those, the update from the legal department and the Woolpert audit. And then the last thing I'd like to bring to your attention is just the reminder for each of the municipalities that we do need to have the financial reports provided to us by a certain time frame. Part of the IGA amendments that Mr. Desai and Ms. Ward presented earlier includes a consistency across all of our IGAs. So as we are updating the IGAs for the city of Beaufort and the town of Port Royal, we're making that language consistent with the other documents in place. So going on to the lab update, the report from them has been included. Was able to speak with Dr. Warren before the meeting started. I think I may have mentioned, or he may have mentioned previously, that they have moved all of their lab operations to the south of the Broad campus, but thankfully they are still very good stewards of our programs, and it's very easy to continue to coordinate our efforts with them despite no longer being just a few miles down the road. We continue to monitor continuously at the Pepper Hall site. Some of those locations we are unable to grab due to ongoing construction, but as soon as those portions are completed, those will be picked up again. We do continue to monitor as well at Mossy Oaks, and we will continue to work on our Q1 efforts as we get our wet weather and dry weather events. Unfortunately, we had a series of rain happen all at the same time over the weekend, and couldn't get those qualifying events to line up. But the full report has been included in the packet. For the SWIC report, again, we presented the draft IGAs for the town of Port Royal and the city of Beaufort to update the language regarding the military delinquent fees. At that same time, we made some additional minor edits, again, to keep the IGA documents consistent across the board. One of that was the reporting period, and then we also included language for the inclusion of a CWI, or countywide infrastructure fee report, that the municipalities requested of the county to be provided at the end of the fiscal year. So we added that requirement into the IGA as well. We did meet in mid-January to discuss our Clemson extension contract. That contract expires at the end of this fiscal year. So we met to ensure that the terms of that contract worked for all of the municipalities that participate in the cost sharing, as well as the Clemson team themselves. So that meeting was held early January, and that contract is going for legal review. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Julianna.
Thank you, Katie.
Good afternoon. So for the stormwater related projects, we were able to close out the flyover bridge repairs last month, and there's some pictures. It had rained a few times when we did the final closeout walkthrough, and so you can see here that things weathered the storm, and we're happy with the way things turned out there. The Shell Point community, it was a big month in terms of grant applications, and it was determined that the BRIC application was not competitive at the federal level. There were 24 projects in the state going up for that, and 6 of them had already been sent to the federal level at that point. So we've shifted gears. We have all those materials, and they could be submitted at a later time, and that's definitely the intent. But we've shifted gears and submitted the hazard mitigation grant program application last Thursday, and I heard some feedback about that right before this meeting, so are excited to push through with that. You'll hear about this in the budget portion, but we're still budgeting to begin the design and permitting parts of that project in the next fiscal year. Construction continues on city property at the Whitehall project, as I'm sure y'all see. Tuxedo Park dredging, we are continuing to look for bids for the engineering drawings necessary to send that out for construction bid. Katie was able to provide the HOA president with an update in late January. And then as far as the Huspa Court North project, I was working on that design yesterday and am excited to continue pushing that down the line. So then I'll also speak to professional contracts report. The CIP list from fiscal year 2018. Brewer Memorial construction continues there. We have some pictures. I think that pond looks great, and it's been fun to see the progress of that throughout. I think they got started in late November, so things have come a long way since then. Then this is the bioswale that is closer to the road. They've dug that out, and it is awaiting landscaping. And then additionally in that CIP list, it was determined to move the Shanklin Road project off of the CIP list. The Evergreen Pond, the utility conflict is still pausing progress, but at the same time, progress has been made, and we have a vision forward as far as that's concerned. So hopefully that will close out mid to late spring. And then Woolpert, we still have our engineering consulting services with them, and just to highlight a few scopes. Scope number 5 for the Arthur Horn Park, that 319 grant is moving forward, and we've had conversations with them concerning that. Scope number 7 for the Northern Ladies Island drainage study, we're in the final stages of getting that reviewed and getting that started. A similar process goes for scope number 8, which is the St. Helena drainage study. We're looking to get that started pretty soon. And then another, it's not a formal scope, but something we had mentioned to you all about and engaged Woolpert in, is looking at the performance of the Battery Creek Pond that's at the intersection of Highway 21 and Highway 170 near the Walmart development. They found that the trash rack was inhibiting the flow from the pond and was maybe not installed where it was specified on the plans. And so we are going to replace that trash rack with a traditional grate rack and install it at a higher elevation on the box and observe that performance and see if that does it, great. If not, we'll analyze for further improvements. So that's all I have as far as professional contracts.
Thank you, Julianna. And Katie, I guess we're back to you.
Back to me.
Regional coordination.
So again, we are still working with the Mossy Oaks group to kind of monitor what the effects of that construction have done for the water quality in the area. And then one other thing I did want to mention in this section, I know it's not here, but the county and the city are both working on a drainage study for the downtown Beaufort area. So I spoke with city officials and their consultant this morning in a meeting, and we just wanted to mention that that's something that we're in partnership and working towards a solution for drainage in that system. So, as far as municipal reports are concerned, we did receive and attach the Town of Bluffton's engineering report. I know we have representatives from the Town of Bluffton and the Town of Hilton Head present, and if they'd like to say anything, I will cede the floor.
Well, I've mentioned this before, but I'm Bill Bauer. I'm with the Town of Bluffton. I've just been recently promoted to Watershed Management Division Manager, so I'll be replacing Kim in the near future. From what I understand, we got to go to our town council, get that approved, and then we'll let you know that's been done, and then whatever we need to do from your side. The report is attached. It's our normal MS4 handout, and nothing really new on that. And that's all I got.
Well, congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you very much.
And I will promise to make you a better
Better sign?
tag.
I don't know, I kind of like this
Jeff
one.
got on to me when he got his promotion, so I will be sure to do that. And I know Jacob didn't say anything, but Jacob is a new hire at the Town of Hilton Head, and they got a really great candidate in Jacob. Jacob comes from DHEC, and so we're a little bit of counterparts at odds at sometimes. But now he's on the right side of the spectrum, working for the MS4. So I'm excited to have Jacob participate and at the MS4 level. So welcome.
Bad guys turn to good guys every once in a while.
I'm a former DHECer too, so we are rehabable. All right. For the MS4 update, included in y'all's packet are our normal series of charts and just updates on permits. January was a little bit slower of a month as far as inspections are concerned. And we are still dealing with COVID and those effects. I know I was taken down towards the end of the month, thankful to still be here. But again, you can see the efforts of our inspectors on those included charts. We have seen quite a bit of permits issued last month. So whatever slowdowns we had as far as the holiday season is concerned, it is over, and we're back running full speed ahead with activity in the county. So those are there for your reference. Next is the public education report, and Miss Ellen Camo's here. If you want to get up and say a few things.
All right, thank you, Katie. And as you guys can see, I have updated the way that I am reporting at the request of that January 14th meeting. Instead of just the typical list I send, it's now in an Excel sheet, so you can see my progress throughout the year on all the planned programs that we have. So for January, it was a lot of planning, but we did have the sediment and erosion control social media campaign on the Low Country Stormwater Partners Facebook page, which reached over 600 people with different measures of how to report things like broken silt fences, unmaintained construction site entrances, and things of that nature. And February, the end of it, is going to be a very big month. We have our consortium meeting on the 22nd. We also have the Healthy Pond Series Wildlife Management webinar on the 24th. And then we also have our first Adopt a Stream program of the year on February 28th. So it's going to be a busy February.
Thank you.
I'm going to throw in a little shameless plug here. I was recently featured on the WTOC for the project going on at Evergreen. So you may or may not have seen me on the 5 o'clock news last week. But we've got that video shared. And then if you are using any gas stations for a Shell or Circle K, we have a Stormwater commercial that plays for 30 seconds while you're pumping your gas and is narrated by yours truly. So 6 things that you can do to help improve your watershed. I'll sign autographs after the meeting. One of the things that JP mentioned, and again, we'll kind of continue to work on, is just implementing that InterGov software that we went officially live with in October. I think part of the minimum control measure requirements, having that in a uniformed, the same location for everything, that InterGov software is really going to help us with that. There are still some things that aren't fully being utilized. So once we're utilizing all portions of that software, I think we'll easily just check that recommendation from JP right off. So, and then the DHEC will be presenting at the next South Carolina Association of Stormwater Managers meeting on March 3rd, I believe. So we're hoping to get some updates from the state where we're at as far as the MS4 permits, the phase 1, some of the phase 1 permits, and what some of the audits coming down from the state may look like in our area. So they've kind of got the whole session that Thursday, and I'll be writing very diligently and bringing back all that information to you all. So quick update on that. And then last but not least, sort of as a highlight, is just to recognize some of our staff members and provide updates to you all as far as where we're at on our staffing levels. Miss Julianna Corbin and Mr. Judah Wood obtained their Certified Stormwater Plan Reviewer certifications in December. This is now the first time in the county program history that all of our stormwater inspectors have that certification. It's a huge accomplishment, and we're extremely proud of both of them for obtaining that certification on their first try. So we do still continue to interview for our administrative assistant position. I know last time I was very hopeful that we had someone ready in the wings to start in January, and she found a different opportunity within the county organization. So we're happy for her and a little sad for us. Poor Joanna. She does a great job helping during these meetings, but I think she's just as ready for a replacement. And then again, we continue to have quite a few vacancies within our infrastructure department and advertise for those positions daily. And last but not least, I just want to recognize our utility operations coordinator, Miss Elaine Sutton. She is a reservist in the United States Navy and has been called to active duty and to be sent on deployment. And she will be away from us for the next few months. And we just want to wish her safety and lots of blessings as she's gone. So I just wanted to recognize her for her efforts, both professionally and personally. And
Well, we appreciate the update on your staff.
thank you. They're what makes,
Congratulations to those who got their certificates,
yeah.
including you.
Oh, thanks, the recertification. And I think we have got the the maintenance reports. Yes. Mr. Rausch could not be here today, but he did include a series of minor projects that the team has been able to complete in the last month. Those are included in this report, and certainly if you all have any questions, we're happy to answer those as needed or send them to Matt. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Howard.
Well, thank you,
You're welcome.
Katie.
I don't have anything much to report except our natural resource meeting. We did talk about the intergovernmental agreements with the town and city of Beaufort. But I had a couple of questions that I've had from constituents that I don't know if y'all know any or not. The impacts of the spill on Battery Creek from Beaufort Jasper, was there any, I don't know if y'all saw that. I know
Yes.
probably many of you did. Was there any problems that you're aware of?
So we sent a request to Beaufort Jasper to get an update on the impacts of that spill and how much made it into the Battery Creek system. I think a good portion of what was initially reported for the 500,000 gallons did unfortunately make it into the creek. They are required by the state to do continuous monitoring afterwards. And within 72 hours of that spill, at the various locations they had in some of the tributary creeks and then out at the creek, the mouth of the creek, they were reporting acceptable water quality standards.
Okay.
So,
And the county got notified pretty quickly about that, or?
no.
Okay. That was another question that I got from some constituents.
We do have set up all of the municipalities. We're on a kind of email blast so that in the event of an SSO or everyone's notified at the same time. And unfortunately for this situation, I found out through the newspaper. So, and Beaufort Jasper did admit that it was their error for not letting us know. The spill itself was within the town of Port Royal's jurisdiction. However, we're all partners and we all care about clean water. So we did send staff to do an illicit discharge investigation. And at the time of him being on site, they were actively cleaning up what was left over. It was a high tide while he was there, so there was a little bit of, it was a mixture of things, I'm sure.
And the other thing, and they're not here, but I had a constituent in the city of Beaufort who lives on Abbey Road in Mossy Oaks, says that the gates aren't working on the Spanish Moss Trail. And I don't know if anyone else has heard that too or not, but I'm just inquiring for him, not for myself necessarily. The storm gates are not functioning there.
The last time I know our inspectors were on site doing sampling would have been last Monday. So I didn't hear anything at that time, but I'm happy to help pass the message along.
Okay, this has been about a week ago that yeah, and I just wanted to bring it up so the board would be aware of those two things, but I don't have anything else to report unless you have some questions.
Any questions for Ms. Howard? If not, thank you, Ms.
Okay,
Howard.
thank you.
Is there any unfinished business that you're aware of? If not, we'll go to new business. And the TY 22 management memo. Katie.
So we won't get into too much on this, but every year we're required per the IGA to present the management fees for the management portion of our program to be presented to the municipalities as they do cost share in the management of the stormwater utility because we help institute the collection of these fees on their behalf. So this is just a breakdown of what was billed for all municipalities in tax year 2020, and how much was collected. We're kind of showing how many accounts that we have, how many accounts from that we collect, and what the average collection rate is. So this is just a breakdown to help the municipalities kind of understand where they're at and where the county is as well. Because there are a few items that we cost share on, we do include cost sharing information. Oh, can you go back up? Thanks. Perfect. So once we get the collection rates, we kind of project what next year may look like. So that's what this chart is, showing what the growth rates we project to be, and then for 2021 and in 2022. And then those last two columns are just the cost share distributions per account out of the total amount of accounts within our area. And then the breakdown of that funding is in the table just below, what each municipality contributes to those cost shares. And then last but not least, the last table just shows to fund the budget that we propose as well as your cost shares. This is the rate per account that we charge for the management of the utility. So the municipalities have been given this information as well as the supporting documentation, and they have until April 1st to respond formally whether or not they accept this management rate for the year.
And if they don't?
Good question. Carolyn, what if they don't accept it?
You'll have to negotiate.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a war paint. So,
Okay, thank you,
thank you.
Katie. And the next item is the fiscal year 23 budget. Carolyn Wallace.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm before you to present the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2023. I know y'all are probably already aware that we're weeks ahead of where we typically are in the budget process. And our final budget is due actually this Friday. So you're seeing this right before we get this finalized. I hope that everyone had a chance to take a look at the one-page handout that we provided in the board packet. This particular budget is very project-focused. Matter of fact, we had to trim our budget basically down to the bare bones to be able to support the projects that are needed in this budget. If you look at this closely, we have about $1 million worth of maintenance projects in this particular budget under non-professional services. And we wanted to fund that with the revenue that we anticipate collecting in the next fiscal year. We were able to do that other than about $195,000 that we're requesting out of the reserve for those projects. So we're happy about that. We do not anticipate actually needing the reserve. For the budget, of course, we have budgeted it, but because of our employment gap, especially in the infrastructure section, which is right around 60% right now, it's hard for us to be 100% manned up for infrastructure. So us anticipating us not being able to fill all of those vacant positions, we should be able to compensate even for the $195,000 in this budget. But of course, we want to present as close to balanced budget as possible. There's only one request for a new FTE, and that is for a lead inspector for the regulatory department. And I think Katie and Neil are finalizing that request. Of course, we have to have that done by Friday, but they're working to get that done. Some of the things that we had to trim out of this budget, if you notice that we're only requesting to replace 2 pieces of equipment. There were other capital asset requests. All of that got trimmed down to just 2 pieces of equipment that needs to be replaced, and they really do need to be replaced. So we could not really go another year without trying to get one of our bush hog and one of our bobcats replaced. And I think that's about it. The only other thing is that we're, of course, asking to use our reserve for continuing our CIP projects. And if you notice, that has been greatly reduced also. The staff has vetted some CIP projects and have taken them off the list. As Julianna has mentioned, Shanklin Road, Salt Creek, those have come off. Those are very high-ticketed CIP projects that are now not in the program anymore. And so we're only looking at $1.25 million in CIP projects for this upcoming fiscal year. So do y'all have any questions for me about the proposed budget for next year?
Any questions for Carolyn?
Okay.
I have a question for Katie. You talk about the number of open positions. Is that affecting the performance of the utility?
It certainly doesn't help it. You know, if we were fully staffed, we would be able to complete things in a more timely fashion and be able to go to more projects. Right now, with a limited crew, we're really trying to focus on, you know, I guess I should say more like emergency situations.
Priorities.
Right, we're prioritizing differently with the staff that we have. Certainly, we are advertising heavily to fill these positions. I know we have made some hires, and then we lose people too. So it is definitely our hope that once the infrastructure team is fully staffed, we can be in a lot more places, getting a lot more done.
Thank you. And thank you,
You're welcome.
Carolyn, for the great job on the budget.
You're welcome. Thank you.
With that, it's time for public comment.
I think we need a recommendation to
Approve
the budget as presented, and I do want to just echo your thanks to Carolyn, as always, for another successful budget year. That is due this Friday, and as per usual, Carolyn's ahead of schedule. So, again, just want to
Thank you, Carolyn.
for being part of our team here.
The budget. Do I have a motion to approve the budget?
I'll make the motion to approve as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The budget is approved
Perfect.
by the board.
Thank you.
Okay, now we can get to public comment. Any public comment at this time? Okay, if not, we have the agenda for the next meeting. If everybody will take a look at it. And let me have a approval of the agenda for the next meeting. And it's June 15th, is that correct?
April 20th. That's
Yeah, that's the next
that's
meeting.
the
Next meeting.
May meeting date, yeah. This next one will be April 20th.
Yeah, April, I'm sorry. Yeah, I looked at that, June the 15th, that's, okay, so we haven't, was there a motion to approve the agenda for the
April 20th.
April 20th meeting? Did it get, was there a motion made for that?
Motion to approve it as presented.
And we all voted on it? Okay. The agenda for the next meeting is approved. And with that, I call for a motion to adjourn.
We're all in favor for that.
Motion for adjournment.
Thank you. Thank you.